Society programs us from an early age with a rigid, invisible timeline. By 25, you should be climbing the corporate ladder and saving consistently. By 30, you are expected to secure a mortgage, own a reliable vehicle, and perhaps start building a diversified investment portfolio for your future. But what happens when the clock strikes 35 and you look at your bank account, only to realize your net worth is practically zero? This realization often triggers a profound psychological crisis. In behavioral economics, we call this the timeline illusion, a rigid benchmark that ignores individual economic realities. You look around and see peers seemingly ascending the social ladder with ease. They appear financially secure, amplifying your internal sense of absolute failure. The panic of starting over after 35 is not just emotional. It is deeply rooted in how our brains process time and financial loss. At this age, the brain's prefrontal cortex recognizes that the runway for compounding interest is getting significantly shorter, triggering a severe acute stress response. Instead of making rational adjustments, the stress pushes many into paralysis or highly risky financial behaviors, desperately trying to catch up overnight. You feel trapped by the sunk costs of your 20s, the degrees you paid for, the jobs you hated, and the money you completely wasted. But here is the analytical truth. The social timeline is a construct designed for an economic era that simply does not exist anymore today. Inflation, wage stagnation, and frequent economic downturns have fundamentally altered the wealth-building trajectory for modern professionals entering their middle 30s and early 40s. Therefore, measuring your current financial status against outdated societal milestones is a cognitive bias that guarantees continuous misery and severely impairs logical decision-making. We carry the heavy burden of past mistakes, believing that being broke at 35 is a permanent sentence rather than a temporary mathematical state. To survive this phase, you must first dismantle the social clock in your mind. Acknowledge the mathematical reality of your bank account without judgment. Only when you accept the baseline of zero can you begin to rebuild. In the next phase, we will examine the wealth comparison trap. Once you accept your baseline, the next psychological hurdle is the wealth comparison trap. At 35, social media becomes an endless gallery of perceived success. This constant exposure triggers profound envy. You see peers acquiring luxury homes and premium vehicles, signaling a higher social status through the Veblen effect. But behavioral economics reveals a hidden truth behind this flexing culture. Many of these status symbols are heavily financed by mounting consumer debt, not actual wealth. There is a massive divergence between visible consumption and invisible net worth. What you are witnessing is often just high-income individuals living paycheck to paycheck. Comparing your starting line to their heavily leveraged illusion creates artificial panic. It forces your brain to prioritize immediate status over long-term financial stability. In a desperate attempt to catch up, many fall victim to lifestyle creep. You begin purchasing premium goods just to feel financially valid among your peers. This reactive spending destroys whatever capital you could have used to genuinely restart. You are literally buying things you do not need to impress people you rarely see. Consider the opportunity cost. The money spent maintaining a facade of middle-class prosperity in your 30s is money stolen directly from your compounding retirement portfolio. This is the essence of the rich-broke phenomenon. A high salary means absolutely nothing if your outflow perfectly matches your artificially inflated lifestyle requirements. To break this cycle, you must analyze the data objectively. If you scrutinize the average household debt statistics, the illusion of universal peer success completely shatters. Most of the people you are desperately trying to keep up with are silently drowning. They are exactly one missed paycheck away from a complete economic collapse. Your financial reset requires ruthless emotional isolation. You must stop outsourcing your financial benchmarks to an algorithm specifically designed to make you feel inadequate. True wealth building after 35 is entirely invisible. It is the quiet accumulation of index funds, the steady reduction of high-interest debt, and strict budget discipline. It does not look glamorous on social media, but mathematical consistency always outperforms heavily leveraged flaunting over a 20-year investment horizon. Once you escape the comparison trap, a more insidious cognitive bias awaits. Next, we will dismantle the anchor of sunk costs from your 20s. Let us open the folder of your 20s. In behavioral economics, the sunk cost fallacy is our tendency to follow through on a failing endeavor, simply because we have already invested significant time, effort, or money into it. At 35, this cognitive trap becomes a massive financial anchor. You might have spent 4 years acquiring a degree you despise, or a decade climbing a corporate ladder that barely pays your basic living expenses. Logically, the optimal move is to pivot. But your brain screams that quitting now means admitting the last 10 years of your life were entirely wasted. This is a fundamental miscalculation of value. The time and capital you spent are gone permanently. They cannot be recovered, regardless of what you do next. By refusing to cut your losses, you are actively paying a premium to stay miserable. You are throwing future potential into a furnace of past mistakes. Many individuals reach their late 30s feeling entirely paralyzed. They hold on to bad investments, failing businesses, or stagnant careers out of sheer historical loyalty. Every single day you stay anchored to a sunk cost, you are incurring a massive invisible penalty. You are sacrificing the exponential growth of tomorrow. Rational economics demands that decisions should be based solely on future utility, completely ignoring the irretrievable costs of the past. But human neurology resists this. To cure this specific crisis, you have to perform a ruthless mental audit. You must become a cold, calculating manager of your own life portfolio. It requires immense psychological strength to look at a decade of hard work, acknowledge that the return on investment is negative, and simply walk away. However, the moment you sever that psychological chain, the relief is instantaneous. The heavy cognitive burden that has been silently draining your energy suddenly vanishes. You finally free up the mental bandwidth required to identify new, highly profitable opportunities that align with your current reality rather than your past obligations. Starting over at 35 without the anchor of past mistakes is not a failure. It is a strategic reallocation of your most valuable remaining resources. But why is letting go so physically painful? In our next phase, we will dive deep into the fascinating neurology of starting over and loss aversion. Why is starting over at 35 so psychologically devastating? The answer lies not in your bank account, but deep within your brain's neurological wiring. Behavioral economics identifies this as loss aversion. Humans experience the psychological pain of losing money or status twice as intensely as the joy of gaining it. When you reset your finances, your brain registers the past decade not as a learning curve, but as a massive, agonizing physical loss. Furthermore, biological shifts occur in our mid-30s. Dopamine production related to novel risks decreases, while cortisol spikes in response to perceived environmental and financial instability. Your amygdala, the fear center of the brain, treats a zero net worth at this age not as an opportunity, but as a literal existential threat. To silence this internal alarm, many individuals attempt the catch-up fallacy. They abandon slow compounding strategies and gamble on highly volatile assets out of sheer panic. This neurologically driven desperation is precisely why intelligent professionals suddenly make catastrophic investment choices in their late 30s, trying to artificially compress time. These volatile bets rarely succeed. Instead of accelerating wealth creation, they often dig a much deeper hole, compounding the original financial trauma significantly. To counteract your own biology, you must intentionally calm your nervous system. You cannot outinvest a panicked mind operating purely on survival instincts. By acknowledging that your fear is merely a chemical reaction, you regain executive function. You shift control back to your logical prefrontal cortex. Starting from zero requires boring, calculated methodology. It demands the discipline to ignore the biological urge for immediate, aggressive financial validation from society. You must embrace the mundane reality of wealth building. Slow, steady accumulation is the only proven antidote to the chaotic panic of the midlife reset. Protecting your asset generation from emotional sabotage is crucial. The market does not care about your age, your past mistakes, or your current anxieties. The financial markets are entirely neutral. They reward consistency and punish impulsive emotional behavior, regardless of whether you are 25 or 45. Now that we understand the neurological enemy, it is time to build the solution. In our final phase, we will execute the ultimate reset protocol. The first step in the reset protocol is restructuring your mental accounting. You must separate your self-worth entirely from your current net worth. In behavioral finance, mental accounting dictates how we categorize money. You must ruthlessly audit your expenses, stripping away any costs tied to social signaling. This means willingly stepping off the social ladder. Let go of the illusion of status. A reliable, older vehicle is far mathematically superior to a financed luxury car. At 35, you still have a 25-year investment horizon before traditional retirement. That is more than enough time for compound interest to work its mathematical magic. However, compounding requires absolute consistency. You must automate your investments to bypass your brain's natural loss aversion and prevent emotional, panic-driven financial decisions. You have to actively curate your environment. Mute the social media feeds that trigger the Veblen effect and induce unnecessary financial anxiety or envy. Instead of desperately trying to look wealthy, focus entirely on becoming wealthy. Direct your energy into acquiring scalable skills or stable, income-generating assets. Accepting a zero baseline at this age is incredibly liberating. It removes the heavy anchor of past expectations and allows you to build with absolute clarity. Your peer group might not understand this radical shift. You may appear to be falling behind, but you are actually building a solid, unshakable foundation. The timeline illusion is nothing more than a collective hallucination. There is no universal financial clock, only the specific mathematical reality of your personal ledger. Wealth generation in your late 30s is remarkably boring. It is a quiet, disciplined routine that requires patience, emotional regulation, and strict adherence to logic. When you stop rushing to catch up, the panic completely subsides. Your prefrontal cortex regains control, and your financial trajectory finally stabilizes. You are not fundamentally broken, and you are definitely not out of time. You simply needed to clear the biological and psychological interference. Reset your timeline, embrace the math, and start executing your strategy today. True financial independence is waiting on the other side of this necessary crisis. Thank you for joining this analytical breakdown. Please remember, this video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute professional financial advice.